Thomas Colton Ruthford's letter to the editor in the Arlington, Washington Times of June the 7th, 1995, that jerked your chain. And Thomas Colton Ruthford is absolutely 100% right, and I'm going to read it to you again tonight. And all of you quit calling me and asking me if I will send you a copy of this. No, I don't have time. You get it the same way we got it. By building an intelligence network, or by writing to the Arlington, Washington Times and asking for a copy of this letter to the editor. It's under the politics section. Quote, during the past several months in the American press, the Democrats have frequently denounced the Republicans as Nazis due to their attempt to control runaway federal spending. How very ironic. I remember the Nazis. Let me share with you a little about them and recall some of their exploits. Now, I'm really going to jerk your chain with Mr. Thomas Colton Ruthford's article. I'm going to jerk it as hard as I can, right over the cliff. So listen closely. And you better grab onto a tree if you're a socialist, because if you don't, you're going to go with the chain. He says, I remember the Nazis. This is a man who was there. Let me share with you a little about them and recall some of their exploits. First of all, Nazi was gutter slang for the verb to nationalize. Now, folks, only socialists nationalize. Only communists nationalize. The Baader-Meinhof gang gave themselves this moniker during their early struggles. The official title of the Nazi Party was the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. Do you understand? Does somebody have to pound it into your head? This lie has gone on long enough. Hitler and the brown shirts advocated the nationalization of education, health care, transportation, natural resources, manufacturing, distribution, and law enforcement. Hitler came to power by turning the working class, unemployed, and academic elite against the conservative republic. After Der Fuhrer's election, the Nazi Party ceased being a political conspiracy and was transformed into a fashionable social phenomenon. Party membership was especially popular with educators, bureaucrats, and the press, including PBS, which is the biggest voice for socialism besides the Communist News Network in this country. Being a Nazi was politically correct. They called themselves, and I quote, the children of the new age of world order, end quote, and looked down their noses at everyone else, just like the politically correct intelligentsia of today's new age of world order. As Hitler accrued more power, he began referring to his critics as, quote, the dark forces of anarchy and hatred, end quote. Where have you heard that recently, ladies and gentlemen? Where have you heard all of this recently? Anyone who questioned Nazi high-handedness in the German press was branded a conservative reactionary. Joseph Goebbels, Minister of Communications, proclaimed, quote, a new world order, end quote. The Nazi reign of terror began with false news reports on the radio and in the newspapers. Paramilitary groups of Poles, Jews, Bohemians, and Gypsies were said to be arming themselves to overthrow the, quote, New World Order, end quote, and Hitler demanded that all good people register their guns so that they wouldn't fall in the hands of terrorists and madmen. Where have you heard that recently, ladies and gentlemen? Right-wing fanatics of the old order who protested firearms registration were arrested by the SS and put in jail for fomenting hatred against the government of the German people. Then the Reichstag government building was blown up and Hitler ramrodded an emergency anti-terrorist act through Parliament that gave the Gestapo extraordinary powers and transferred the rights of the people into the hands of the Chancellor Adolf Hitler, and he became a dictator overnight. Exactly what is happening here in this country today. The leader then declared that for the well-being of the German people, all private firearms were to be confiscated by the Gestapo and the Wehrmacht, the federal law enforcement and the military. German citizens who refused to surrender their guns when the jackboots, Gestapo, came calling were murdered in their homes. By the way, the Gestapo was the Federal Marshal Service of the Third Reich. The SWAT team was invented and perfected by the Gestapo to break into the homes of the enemies of the German people, and you can see this in the films of the time. When the Polizei Bewachen, or the local police, refused to take away guns from townsfolk, they themselves were disarmed and dragged out into the street and shot to death by the SA and the SS, the Nazi version of the BATF and the FBI. When several Lutheran ministers spoke out against these atrocities, they were imprisoned and never seen again. The Gestapo began to confiscate and seize the homes, businesses, bank accounts, and personal belongings of wealthy conservative citizens who had prospered in the old republic. Pamphleteers who urged revolt against the Nazis were shot on sight by national law enforcement and the military. Gypsies and Jews were detained and sent to labor camps. Mountain roads throughout Central Europe were closed to prevent escape of fugitives into the wilderness and to prevent movement and concealment of partisan resistance fighters. Public schools rewrote history, and Hitler youth groups taught children to report their parents to their teachers for anti-Nazi remarks, and they are teaching your children to do the same thing today. Such parents disappeared. Pagan animism became the state religion of the Third Reich, and Christians were widely condemned as right-wing fanatics. You'd better take a look around, folks. Millions of books were burned first, and then people. Millions of them burned in huge ovens after they were first gassed to death. Unmarried women were paid large sums of money to have babies out of wedlock and then given medals for it. Evil was declared as being good, and good was condemned as being evil. World order was coming, and the German people were going to be the peacekeepers, just like the United States is said to be today. Yes, indeed. I remember the Nazis, and they weren't Republicans, they were socialists, and they were monsters. Signed, Thomas Colton Rutherford, Arlington. And this is from the Arlington, Washington Times, June the 7th, 1995. I hope I have really pulled your chain. And you all thought I was nuts when I said that Louis Jolyon West went to Oklahoma City? Here is from the Sunday Oklahoman, Sunday, June 25th, 1995, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Louis Jolyon West, chairman of psychiatry at the University of California at Los Angeles Medical School. West, now 70, has spent much of his career studying the effects of trauma on individuals and on communities. At UCLA, he has built a team of psychiatrists who travel around the world offering help to communities struck by disaster. Because we have a lot of experience here with disasters, as you can imagine, he said. West has also worked with survivors of terrorist attacks. He has been to Oklahoma twice since the bombing, helping the local mental health community plan in its response. He is the premier expert on mind control for the United States government and the intelligence community. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Don't go away. I'll be right back with a chilling tale of premonition for what's going to befall those of us here in the near future.